Hi. As indicated in the title of this presentation, today I will be discussing how literature and film help us escape what I call the visual trap of the agricultural frontier. The agricultural frontier, sometimes called farming frontier or frontera agrícola in Spanish, is often described as the division zone between ranching and farming lands and those that have never been cultivated before. In recent years, images of the agricultural frontier have become more prevalent in newspapers, TV, films, and social media, as they are now part of the iconography tied to environmental issues such as deforestation. Here is an image that appeared in the Spanish newspaper El País in 2018, accompanying a report on the expansion of the agricultural frontier in Argentina. This is a screenshot from a video uploaded to the YouTube channel of the British newspaper The Guardian, with the title "Aerial Footage Shows Extent of Deforestation of Argentina in Argentina's Gran Chaco Forest." However, images of the agricultural frontier can also be found in materials created by government agencies and agribusiness stakeholders. These images were included in a press release by a Colombian agency announcing the official definition and delimitation of the agricultural frontier throughout Colombia. The popularity of such images can be explained in part due to how easily they can attract the attention of our eyes. They are full of symmetric forms, consistent patterns, star-colored contrasts, precise lines, and perfectly defined angles. This power of attraction is precisely at the center of what I call a visual trap. That is, overwhelming visual stimulation that generates the false belief that the separation of the adjacent ecosystems in these zones is unmovable and impenetrable. In fact, as with any other border, the agricultural frontier is constantly changing. Contrary to images of machinery making way for new farmable land, like the one I show here, the most common agro-industrial strategies to keep nature at bay are not mechanical, but chemical. They include the continuous use of various pesticides intended to act as a sort of immigration officer tasked with the job of protecting crops from various plants, insects, snails, slugs, birds, bacteria, and fungi, among other living beings, which can be considered a threat to agricultural production. In this sense, the dynamics of the agricultural frontier at times seem to mirror those of other border environments. Like other human-created borders, the agricultural frontier is a very porous one. Animal, plant, fungal, and bacterial species cross such border regularly along with non-living matter, challenging the farmers, machinery, and chemical agents that try to stop them. Conversely, biological and chemical agents originated in the crops travel to cultivated areas, transported by air and water currents, among other ways. The visuality of the agricultural frontier prevents us from grasping the numerous processes that take place in these spaces and ecosystems, as well as the effects of human activity on non-living and living beings. In this case, literature and film provide invaluable tools to break away from the visual trap of the agricultural frontier. They allow us to follow the invisible paths of toxic chemicals, making us realize that thinking about such substances as immigration officers, the metaphor I previously mentioned, is not only incorrect but dangerous. Toxic chemicals are themselves material agents that could not care less about this artificial border. They spread beyond its apparent limits with ease, both within and outside, on the surface and underground, attached to the crops they are supposed to protect, popping up in the most inconspicuous places. There is a particular genre that seems especially apt for this task. My definition of this genre is informed by what Heather Hauser calls eco-sickness narratives. Hauser uses this term to identify a group of contemporary novels and memoirs that, through the deployment of affect in representations of sick bodies, bring readers to environmental consciousness. Hauser revisits the notion of sickness, warning us that she does not use it as a synonym of either disease or illness. Instead, she sees sickness as a relational concept that, and I quote, cannot be confined to a single system and links up the biomedical, environmental, social, and ethico-political. And it shows the imbrication of human and environment, end of quote. I propose that in recent years, a similar genre has emerged and gained popularity in Latin America, a genre that I call agro-sickness narratives. This genre is composed by novels, graphic novels, short stories, fictional films, documentaries, and other works that not only and I quote Hauser, deploy affect in narratives of sick bodies to bring readers to environmental consciousness, end of quote, but also through the recognition of the material continuity of human and non-human beings, interrogate the effects of large-scale agribusiness practices. Here are some examples of works that could be described in such terms. Now, I will examine how some of these works can help us overcome the visual trap of agricultural frontier images. This screenshot comes from Diego Martinez Viñati's film La Tierra Roja. The film takes us to the northeastern Argentinian region of Misiones. It follows a foreman that works for a multinational company and supervises the clearing of forests to then plant pines for paper production. In this particular scene, we see a group of people spraying agrochemicals in the field. What we notice in the frame is a representation of the agricultural frontier that lacks sharp contrast and a clear division between cultivated and uncultivated areas. The camera is positioned at a slightly high angle, placing humans at a lower level than most plants. The composition of the frame is also very telling. Humans are distributed in a pattern that mirrors that of the pines. Moreover, the colors of their clothes are in the same spectrum of the land underneath, and we cannot see their feet, as if they were emerging out of the ground. Overall, this frame points to the continuity between human and non-human bodies in the material world. In this case, we have a literary representation of the spread of toxic chemicals. This quote comes from the English translation of Samantha Schwebling's novel Distancia del Rescate. Here we have a boy, David, that has entered a stream poisoned with an unnamed substance that is used in the nearby soy fields. We see that the ominous tone of the text traces a connection between human and non-human animals. Boy, mother, horse, and bird are united by a general sense of fear and impending death. By binding the birds, the stallions, and David's fate, the novel advocates for a continuity of human and non-human bodies, bodies equally subjected to the effects of toxic substances that cannot be contained. In this last example, I will briefly discuss representations of the documentary Viaje a los Pueblos Fumigados, or A Journey to the Fumigated Towns, by Argentinian director Fernando Pino Solanas. Solanas examines the negative effects of pesticides among rural communities in Argentina. The opening sequence reproduces some of the iconographic images of the agricultural frontier, aerial images of machines clearing uncultivated land to give way to future crops. However, soon we are on the ground, accompanying a group of local residents that travels to clear areas to remove some of the fallen trees before they get born. The camera shows a land that has little in common with the flatness and homogeneity shown in aerial images. Furthermore, we can see how humans and fallen trees are transported next to each other on the back of the truck. Close to the end of the film, the camera takes us again to the agricultural frontier. This time, the division is marked by the presence of a wire fence. The camera is located on the side of unclear land, next to a man that belongs to the Wichí indigenous group. The man describes how the wire fence passes through an area that serves as the community cemetery, leaving some of the buried ancestors on the other side. Throughout the film, there is a combination of aerial shots and representations at ground level of humans, non-human animals, and plants that inhabit the ecosystems transformed by the clearing of woods and forests. The film is explicitly resisting the flattening of the land, a neoliberal impulse rooted in colonial cartographic territorializations that eliminates the ecologies of the areas portrayed. Certainly, agrosickness narratives go beyond issues related to the agricultural frontier. Many of them take place in areas traditionally devoted to agriculture that have been transformed by the expansion of large-scale, intensive monoculture farming. They also stretch across numerous other genres, from horror and science fiction to environmental documentary film. Nonetheless, the diversity of agrosickness narratives is very much needed to be able to grasp the complexity of how globalized agribusiness practices are changing our world.